Let me get started here. All right, I got my chat here, so if anybody has any questions as I'm going along, feel free to ask away. All right, so welcome to another weekly subtext update because things change every 24 hours. All right, so let me go here. Okay. So today I want to talk about or go over NarrativeSync. So, hi Victoria. Um, it's the same exact interface as what used to be Brainstorm AI. It's the same exact thing. It's just a little more clear as to what it does, which is it can still brainstorm ideas and do stuff like that. But if you want to make sure your ideas stay in line with the story form, which is this essential part of the whole story form process anyways, then this hopefully would make a little bit more sense. So what does that mean exactly in practice? Let me show you this thing here too. Okay. So if, let's just say if I went into the develop, I thought this was hilarious. So this is the one that Muse came up with today called Camp Fun, which is a slasher horror film, and it totally spoiled the whole story, who the real killer was. It's like Scream, but I don't have any I don't have any blocks there for spoiler alerts or anything. And besides, if you know the story form, you know how it all turns out. So I thought this would be a fun one to actually do. So I'm gonna start with that story, and this should go pretty quick. Boop, boop, boop. And then I'll take that one and then build off of that. Okay, so come back, Story Central, duplicate of Camp Fun. So all it did was take the idea of the story that it came up with Camp Fun, and then we can go in and mess around with it. But I wanted to show how the NarrativeSync, how that all works out once it gets all loaded up here. Okay, so you'll see it's got duplicate Camp Fun. I'll just leave that there for right now. Pulled in the log line that was there originally. So you can see a group of thrill-seeking friends ventures to a long-abandoned summer camp for one final weekend of debauchery, only to awaken a vengeful killer whose bloodlust turns their getaway into a fight for survival. Super cool. Genre dynamics. So slasher horror is just the short version of it. These could be 2 to 3 paragraphs long. You can put as much as you want in there. And it does draw upon this when it does stuff like NarrativeSync and stuff like that, so that it knows the personality of the kind of storytelling that you're looking for. Otherwise, it'll make up its own thing. So those are the two that showed up. And then the blended through lines is just what you'll see here in the 4 through line section. So if I opened up this overview up here at the top, this is the same exact thing that was just written, that spoiler thing on the story starters page. It's the same exact thing. Now you can take this and you can make it whatever. I mean, you can take it and, I don't know, sell it for $20 million or whatever it is. Or you can go in and change it. But just know, I'm making it really clear that anything that is written above the line here is not used by AI or used anywhere else in any kind of generative sense. Everything that's above the surface is just for you, the author, so that you can better understand what your story is. But it's not going to use those bits and pieces. Originally, like 3 or 4 years ago, I did use this. This is actually the point of it, because there was the issue of how big the kind of context I could send. Now that I can send giant context, there's no need for this, and it gets better because then I have all these really more detailed versions here that I can use. So I'm going to get rid of the extra ones here. 1 second. Extra one. Really should overwrite those extra ones. Let's go ahead and all those. Okay. So debauchery turns deadly. Jordan's the main character. Victor is the obstacle character, and then siblings is their relationship. So that all works out great. Okay, so then now that I have that, if I go to, let's just do the objective story. And I go into here, and maybe I just want to go straight into the story beats, which are the things that happen in the story. If it was me and I was making the story myself, I'd probably build out the story points, but for right now, just for the sake of demo, I'll do the story beats. And you'll see that there's nothing here. It's completely empty. And that's because I haven't set the perspective of the objective story yet. Because we could have a bunch of different objective stories that all align with this objective story here. So that's the concept of the handoff, because this is just a perspective. You could hand off and have different people dealing with the same thematic issues and that kind of thing. So like an ensemble story like Love Actually or something like that, if they're all dealing with the same sort
Hey. No.
whatever that was. If everybody's dealing with the same sort of thematic issues, then you could track and have a different perspective for each group of people. That's something you could do. If you have different obstacle characters, you could do that as well. So for right now, I'm just going to set this to the objective story that I copied from the story starter, and you'll see there's no story points. It's just or story beats. It's just the through lines, the objective story, main character, and that stuff. So let's say I just want to start. Let's start here. You can start anywhere. So I'll start halfway through it. And oh, interesting. Progress. Okay. So then I will open it up and it's completely empty. There's nothing in there. So this is what used to be the brainstorm AI, and it was specifically, oh, I should change this up here. It was specifically set just for coming up with ideas. Because quite soon there will be a lot of third-party access and other people connecting into Subtxt. It makes more sense to have this be a NarrativeSync thing where people from outside applications can check and see, oh, is this story beat aligned? How should it be aligned better to, tell a better story? So at the top here, you have this slider. This will still be here, but this is the thing that will, when it comes to actually writing out the alignment, either really heavily weighted towards very specific, like right in line, or if you want something a little more imaginative, you would kind of crank that up there. And that is always going to be with the NarrativeSync. So I will change that logo. Right now, I'm going to keep it pretty, not logo, icon. So it works exactly the same. I changed this, sync a new idea with the story structure, as opposed to like come up with a bunch of ideas. If it's completely empty, and I have no idea what I'm doing in here, I can just tap this, and then it'll go out and based on what the objective story is, and everything that's going on in the plot, then it will go ahead and take that and align it. Although I can see who the heck is Alex? That's not even one of the players. Let me make sure. Oh, a group of thrill seeking. Let's call them out here. Oh, because I haven't developed the. Actually, let's do this. This might be fun. So because it doesn't know who the players are, it's just making up players here. Because if I go into the players and I go to, yeah, there's probably nobody in here. Yeah. All right. Let's do, all right. I will do this first then. Slight detour, just so that the other thing works. Set that perspective, and then I'm going to just generate the plot and the players. Yes. Okay. So what this will do is that second section that says plot and players, it will go through and build out the entire cast of players that fit into that story, and then do those story points that are on that page that say plot and players. So I'm just doing this right now just so there's some information for it to grab from. And it should do a reasonably quick job of that. So while that's going on there, I don't know if there's any here. While that's doing that, let me just show you and explain. Oh, so this is it in the guide. I had this updated for the narrative sync here, but I thought maybe I could do this. Where are you going? On the front page. So when it comes to the narrative sync, this here. So what happens is every 2 weeks, I run a whole bunch of tests against all the story beats and story points that Subtxt is coming up with and check to make sure that they're doing a good job. So it's like I'm reviewing Subtxt to make sure it's not just making up stuff that aren't in alignment with it. So, if you're using Muse currently right now, just because of the way that technology is set up, it will sometimes say, yeah, that's a great job. And it might be off by a little bit, or there might be something that's a little bit not quite in there. The narrative sync stuff is stuff that I have trained and fine-tuned and gone over and made really as strong as I possibly can, based on a bunch of different test criteria to go through and make sure it's capturing the method of the conflict. So like for the one that I just was trying to do where it was progress, if if it's writing about something that's not progress and it's something completely different, then it gets marked low. If it's not furthering the story, it gets marked down. If it isn't working the way that a method should work in terms of like a cause and effect, if it's just mad libbing the idea of what that the term is, if it's progress, like, oh, John and Steve progress through the forest, and that has nothing to do with what progress is supposed to be. It's supposed to be when you engage in how things are changing, and that's where your focus is, and you make decisions and take actions based on that, that creates conflict that then pushes the story forward. That's what it should be. So it checks this, checks to make sure it's not coming up with sort of thematic ideas and commenting on it. Checks, this one's a new one. That's why this is one is way off, in that I used to treat the three story beats at the exact same. I just treated them the same. They were just different things. And I found I was starting to get not ideal results. And so I am now making sure transits are much bigger, kind of like act sized stuff. Progressions are more within, 4 progressions within an act. And then the event should be really quick, like just really quick little beats. So it's checking that. And then the last thing is currently is making sure it's good with the through line, because the objective story version of a transit will be much different than an obstacle character. So that's what all this is. And it's all, I don't sit there and hand do them because there's a billion of them, but it goes through and measures it all by itself and reports back all this stuff. And then conceivably, it'll just get better and better as you go through. So now that it's got all this stuff, let's go to the plot here. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so you'll see here, I'm back here in plot and players and in the plot, and I will set it back to debauchery turns deadly. And again, it's the same thing that was on that 4 through lines, but now it's just about the objective story. So I have the goal here, which is to progress steadily into the camp's malignant, cursed past. Amid the rising terror, the group strives to move forward despite the mounting horrors, clinging to the hope of unraveling the king's dark secrets. That would be one I might adjust. And then consequence is pre-conscious. If their cautious progress falters, the friends are doomed to succumb to primal, unthinking fear. That actually is pretty good. This immediate chaotic panic fractures their unity. So, if they can't progress and kind of roll with the punches of stuff that's going through progress of the summer camp, maybe the summer camp is coming to an end, then their lizard brain fight or flight will take over and maybe they'll start attacking each other. And then it's decision driven, which is weird for a horror film. At the outset, a tight-knit but group setting make a bold decision to spend one last wild weekend at their abandoned summer camp. So that would be kind of like the first plot point that kicks everything off. And then the end is their bold move exploits their miscalculation, transforming their. Okay, this is an action, not a decision. So again, that would be something that I would be able to fine tune in the background. So that's why just throwing decision and story driver into an LM and you get this, yeah, it thinks it's right, but unless it's been trained on everything that's in there, you're going to get answers like this that aren't quite right. And then the outcome here, what happens to them at the end? Oh, it's failure. Let's see. Despite their hard, tough efforts and fleeting hope of progress, the friends' struggle ends in tragedy. One by one, they fall victim to the vengeful presence, leaving behind nothing but the echoes of a wild, ill-fated debauchery in a summer camp forever tainted by blood and despair. All right, that's pretty cool. So there you can see that it ends in failure, and that was all generated off of the story form. And then at the end, they goes through and blends all those story points into this kind of understanding of what your objective story is all about. In addition to doing that, it also should have made all the players here. So it has Jordan, and if I open them up, I've added a whole bunch of stuff here to make the storytelling and future features more interesting. So you still have their role that's in the objective story, but then there's a kind of visual aspect to them, how they're going to sound if they were to speak, and then any kind of bio. But again, all this stuff is above the line, whereas the important stuff as far as the story form is concerned is underneath. So you have, he's the protagonist, so he has these two major elements. And then this is an understanding of these elements in reference to the goal, because that's what you should be thinking of in terms of this objective story character. And then his brother, spoiler, is the bad guy, the antagonist and reawakened killer seeking acknowledgement. So it went through and assigned, essentially just took the archetypal characters from Dramatica Theory and dropped them in there, giving them all the appropriate motivations that you would expect in there, all in alignment with the what do you call it? The story form. All right, so now that I have that, hopefully, if not, we will do a different through line. But let's see. Progress. Let's see if it actually draws from the actual cast. Nope. Alex. Who the heck is Alex? Alex is not a player, right? Let's do Jordan, Emily, and Tyler. Okay. So I will find out why it just did not pick the right cast. But as you go through and you want to grab from the set of characters, you can just write in the names of the characters that you want to appear in this part of the story. And it will understand who you mean out of the plot players, grab their motivations, and then have them fit into here for this act order. So that's progress. That one's going to be harder to show what the difference is. Let's do, um, actually, let's break this down. And what is the present? Let's just do present. Gordon insists they barricade the doors and windows to buy time. However, Tyler argues that staying put is a death sentence. Emily, caught in the middle, tries to mediate. The argument grows heated. Tyler accusing Jordan of being too cautious. Okay, so it's like the first act and the present is what's the most the thing everybody's looking at here. So you can see that's more act oriented here, more act sized, and I could do more if I wanted to. The bad guy's name is what? His name is Victor. So let's do Victor starts his rampage. So it'll take the idea of Victor starting his rampage, but put it in the context of present and what that means when you're just focused on the here and now and you want something like immediately fixed, right? So I can add that in there. And now I have a whole bunch of stuff that's there for the act. And let's just say for right now that that is okay. And we really, really like that. Now, if I go ahead and break it down into the progressions are the next step down. So they're like 4 different story beats that tell the story of this first present movement. And you can see they go through 4 facets here, like experience, so who's familiar with what, enlightenment, who has inspired ideas, the wisest, and then at the end, skill. So it's kind of the order in which everything goes in. And when I chose to break it down just for time, I didn't set any of the AI stuff because if you set generate, what it'll do is it'll look at this stuff and then break it down in context. But for right now, I'll just have experience here. And if I wanted to, I could go through here and think of experience like, oh, okay, maybe something about the horrors of war, right? And now when I hit the narrative sync, it'll sync up this idea of experiencing the horrors of war with what is going on in this part of the story. Passing sand, the sound of vengeful weight. Okay, so then that's more progression oriented. But let's say I'm reading through this. The group huddles in the mess hall, the air thick with tension as Jordan, his voice steady but strained, insists on fortifying their position. Tyler, however, dismisses Jordan's caution as cowardice. So they're kind of arguing over who has more experience and who should be in charge. And then that kind of like kicks off the story. And it's all right. It's a nice little setup. But maybe there's a way to make it better. So let's look at that. And so what I can do is I can review it. And again, it goes through and reviews this in terms of how well it's meeting all those requirements. And then if it grades it, and then if it needs to be improved, offers up 3 different suggestions, which are kind of like the narrative sync, but it's a way for you to like learn how it actually works. And to improve your understanding of narrative, along with just coming up with different narrative ideas that'll fit in there. So it masterfully explores the role of experience. However, the clash with Tyler portrays how excessive dependence on the hold habits can create division. This balance between value and wisdom and evolving with the moment adds to the depths. The friction builds a powerful tension. Actually, this is actually pretty good. All right. Yeah, usually it can be a little bit more negative. So the group huddles in the dimly lit mess hall, their faces etched with exhaustion. Fear, Jordan, haunted by memories of past moments, insists on fortifying their position. And it'll give you different examples or suggestions that you can then add into this and make it better. All the time keeping it aligned with that experience. So if I go into enlightened and then I say something like, oh, Emily, It's a bright idea. Sure what it is. No one else has. So that's good. That's like kind of what enlightenment is about, but it doesn't really talk about conflict and how that pushes the story forward. So this should put that better into context here. Emily's overconfidence in her idea leads to disaster. So it's not enough just to have a bright idea, but that bright idea then leads to some sort of problem. So it's pushing it beyond just being too in line for your own good, but then what kind of conflict, what kind of problem does that cause? And that should be every story beat has that. Emily suddenly interjects with a bold idea. She suggests using the camp's old intercom system to distract the presence. Her confidence in the plan is infectious, and despite Jordan's reservations, the group decides to act on her suggestion. So that everybody would be so excited they would go along with her idea. However, as they attempt to implement the plan, they discover the intercom system is not only broken, but also emits a loud, static-filled noise when tampered with. The sound draws the presence closer, forcing the group to abandon their position and fleeing disarray. Emily, devastated by the unintended consequences of her idea, struggles to regain the group's trust as they face the fallout of miscalculation. I have no idea why, but this is great. And then the last sentence is like not good because it just kills the whole thing. And then struggles to regain and thinks about it. There's nothing worse than like at the end of a story beat, somebody just sitting there thinking and like, oh wow, let me struggle and think about this. Everything up into there is great, and I will train the heck out of that so that this goes away. It's one of the main reasons why I set up this whole narrative sync thing, so I could get rid of this. Because I don't need commentary on what is already working story form wise. So what you can do is you can just add it, and for now, and you can just by default, just go to the last sentence, and it's fine. Works out great. So now it's like, oh yeah, let's go with Emily. She always knows what to do. And then they do it, they do a big loud screech, and then, one of them dies or something like that. So that is turning enlightenment into something that's an actual uh, thing that pushes the story forward, right? So that one's pretty good. And then let me break it down. And that's about the size of what a progression will look like compared to an act, which really should have been much bigger, but we'll work on that. So now let me go ahead and break it down into the 4 events of that scene with the intercom. So I'll break that down and let's see how that would play out. It would play out through pursuit. I mean, this is the easiest one ever. So they're being pursued. She tries to take control. This one will be interesting. Other people abandon, maybe people that are smarter. And then now they're on the run at the end, or they're just focused on preventing somebody else from being in charge. So I lucked out because this is the easiest quad in the entire system. Chasing someone with a hidden agenda. All right. So these should be super quick, like not that much. No, that's really long. Emily, driven by her secretly follows the enemy she believes. She hangs with the group during the chaos, tracking the figure through the dense forest. No, that's way too much. Let's see if we can get something better. All right, that's more event size. As the group scrambles to escape the presence, Jordan notices Emily slipping away from the group and heading toward the camp storage shed. Suspecting her of hiding something, Jordan breaks away to follow her, only to knock over a stack of metal tools, creating a loud clatter that echoes through the camp. Perfect. Because he felt motivated to chase somebody with a hidden agenda, it revealed his position. That's a story beat that works great. Now, we know it's because she's going to be doing this, which is just going to make things worse. But this is setting up the situation of her kind of stepping away from everybody, then he's going to go after her. So let's look at what the next beat would be. Manipulating events. Should it be? No, likes to make really long ones. I mean, it's not horrible. I'm gonna keep it for right now, but I want to see if I can get something that's a little easier to read. Okay. I mean, both of these are pretty good. So he sneaks off with her, and then they get into an argument over control. And because she's overly controlling, that's when they kick it off and they make the loud screeching sound, right? Which is an action that then alerts the bad guy to their position, and then they can come after him or come after them. So then now, abandoned, being unrestrained by a group. Let's see what that comes up with. Panic spreads, Jordan. That one's not very exciting. Try a different one. And I'm just hitting this, just do a different one to see what else comes up next. Frustrated, decides to act on her own, sneaking away from the camp. I could also do this. And freeing the world from oppression. See, embracing free will. The sound draws the presence. I mean, okay, it's better. Turning someone loose. I do wish that this was more in line with these two before here. So let's say, hesitates, torn between chasing after her and following the others. There should actually be. I will leave that for a second. Let's see where it ends up. Okay, awesome. That is great. Avoidance of the topic creates a rift as a group grows increasing, and Jordan steps forward to challenge her authority. Okay, so that's super cool. So in the beginning, she went off in pursuit, and at the end, now she's completely avoiding everybody, and pretty much nobody wants to listen to her anymore by the end of it. So you've gone from like somebody who is really driven to pursue something, and at the end is both avoiding conflict, and then everybody's avoiding her at the end. This one should have likely been more, back and forth between people trying to take control and then people losing their mind, going all over the place because they're being chased down by the bad guy. Trying to save themselves. Yeah. And then there should be, a couple people should. Who should we get rid of? Let's get rid of Chris. Chris Walker. It's taken out. Down. That would be a case of because they're all going crazy and all over the place. Somebody stumbles over something or knocks something down or whatever, and he's like coming up against the thing and like, "Ah," and then the presence gets him. He's the first one, and then this is the aftermath, which is not just like people sitting around talking about it, but actively like, okay, we're never listening to her again. So they went into it like, yeah, definitely, definitely. Like, although Jordan went after her, somebody's like, oh, let her do what she has to do. She tries to take control. Maybe there's a thing between Jordan and Emily about who needs to be in control. Alerts the presence to where they are. Everybody's running around trying to save themselves, and then Chris loses his life, and now nobody wants anything to do with her. Which then moves into the next movement where now they're just going to do the smartest thing possible. Just let's make the smartest, wisest choice. Wising up about something. Let's never listen to Emily again, even though she's going to be the reason why they live in the end. So you always have that inequity. So really make sure when you go through all the different story beats that it just doesn't die altogether. Uh, okay, cool. So now, because of where they came from before, now nobody wants to listen to her advice, even though I will give them her. She's now giving them really great, wise advice that nobody's listening to, and then more people are going to die from it. And then you would just repeat the same thing, where now I would break it down into the next events and be able to see what's there. So now faith, nobody believes in her. And then conscience, let's just do this the safest thing. People are going to give into temptation, and now nobody knows what to do anymore. It's like we had a faith in it, and now by the end of this, nobody knows, and now it's just going to be up to who can keep us alive, right? Oh, having fighting and survival skills. They just go along with Jordan and Tyler because they are the only ones who know how to fight. They're both in class together. And this all has to do with Camp Fun. Oh, that's interesting. So I was just thinking, all right, we're just going to rely on them. But because that is not enough, it actually went a step further and said, okay, now their skills clash. So they're going to have different, maybe one has karate style and one has, boxing or something. And so now there's like a fight between who has the best skills. And then that is how the first act kind of works out. So that's what the narrative sync does. You can just drop in any idea you have and then have it sync it up, check it against, what does this actually mean? What's the context of the story? I want to work a little bit more on like the beats before and the beats that are after so that it knows, a little bit more context of what's going on around it. And then also, it adds in the little flavors down here at the bottom so that uh, it keeps within the story and goes forward. And then that's it. And then the story points have them as well. So if I went back to, let's go to Jordan for a second. And let's figure out what his big issue is. Ah, that's funny. His issue is enlightenment. Wow, that's really cool. He believes that if he can just uncover some grand truth or achieve a moment of epiphany, he can finally absolve himself of his failures and make sense of his pain. I mean, again, everything but the last sentence. And now that I have that and I have enlightenment, if you do the alignment here, it'll look at this and find the closest understanding of what enlightenment is out of this big giant long list. That's what the point of this is. So frequently I just have the storytelling in here, and then I use this just to kind of just have like a shorthand look at what his issue is. Oh yeah, he's going to be all about enlightenment, and what kind of issues does that bring up for him. And again, if I reviewed it, it should go through and do more of a measured look at it. This was kind of like off the cuff. What's the first idea? This is kind of like subtext flow mode, and then this is more focused. It's able to make more intelligent sort of answers and give that back to you. And that's why it takes a little bit longer to come back. Jordan reads journey is from its chaos. Yeah, to elevate, consider enhancing the emotional stakes or grounding the consequences more vividly. So the more he chases enlightenment on his own terms, the further he strays from the wisdom that could guide him towards healing and reconciliation. Oh, so this is interesting too. When it comes to tuning everything in here, if we looked at, let me add this one just so I can save it. It's a little bit different. If I look at enlightenment, so I have more of an understanding of what these different methods of conflict look like, and the idea that it's not just boxes that everything fits in, but that there is a range that it comes through. So when we look at enlightenment, and maybe it's actually probably better here, enlightenment, you're talking about either just enlightenment, like I'm just seeking, what is the meaning of life and that kind of stuff. Or you can have too much of it. So there's so much of it that, like your whole life is based on it. And if you don't get it, you're just constantly doing it. It's like an abundance of it. Or the opposite of that, the opposite direction would be a lack of it, which is different than a lack of wisdom when it comes to narrative. So a lack of enlightenment is, you, you don't even like look into it. You don't even try to see if there's more to life. That is not the same thing as being dumb, which is a lack of wisdom. And so when I go through and come up with these suggestions in the narrative sync, it does the whole range. It doesn't just do one version of it. It has a range of it that you can sometimes see in these things that come through. Oh, did I just come off the page? So that if I went back to story, that one that I saved for enlightenment almost read as if it was a lack of it, except for this first sentence. He mistakes action for understanding, throwing himself into dangerous escapades that he believes will somehow cleanse his soul or prove his worth. However, his avoidance of true introspection blinds him to the wisdom he could gain from confronting his emotional scars. So he's like not taking the time to become more enlightened, which is a little bit different than this. Thematically speaking, it still works because they're all explorations of enlightenment. But I thought this was really cool as a means of getting that in there so that you could have a whole range of it. So it's not just, one way or the other. And right now, just because of everything that's coming out in March, I'm focusing more heavily on the story beats and less on the story points for right now. So these should turn out to be much better. You'll see a bigger difference here. So in the beginning, Jordan is just all about control. He's got like control issues big time. So let's see what kind of fun thing comes up for him. The camp fun, they're just stuck, like they can't leave. That would probably be the first act. Jordan Reed joins a community project aimed at revitalizing the local park. Initially, he sees this as an opportunity to prove his worth and make amends. That's funny. So this is the reason why he ends up at the park. Maybe he's lost sight with all these friends, and he ends up there because this is an opportunity to finally achieve something. I can finally make something happen. And that's his personal issue. So we get to see what it's like when you are completely restoring a rebellion. That's not good. Gaining control of your life is probably way better. See if we can get a better. Act should be much bigger. I'll have to check. That doesn't seem like it's what we know about Jordan here. Oh. Fractured family bond and the failure to reconcile. Jordan battles the questioning sense of worth and responsibility. No. Oh, there was. Arg. Do, do, do. Because this is so generic, this thing that's here. It's interesting. We should probably be more specific. Then that's why it was coming up with kind of weird sort of things going on in his life. Okay, that is a lot. Um, Last sentence. Goodbye. Nope. All right, let's see if that does better. Yeah, it's like he's trying to take control of the summer park, and in doing so, ends up unleashing his brother. Jordan attempts to secure funding and support lead to confrontations. That's good, but genre should be more of a genre. That's not too bad. It has, oh, that's fine. It's focus. Yeah, again, you don't need the commentary on it. I got any questions? That's pretty much it. So yeah, that'll be I'll do better job on the genre. Make sure I check to see if objective story. Yeah. The act of obtaining stands as a double-edged sword. While Jordan's perseverance to rebuild the camp symbolizes his quest for stability, it also unleashes dark supernatural forces. And I would probably say that this is more about unleashing dark forces within Jordan. This through line. It's about violent action. So he is in what Dramatica would call physics or external processing. Um, he attacks the overgrowth with sharp tools, but with every blow, every strike, Jordan seems to unearth not just the camp's buried history, but fragments of his own suppressed rage. So we're just looking personally, like the more violent action you take, the more violent person that makes you. So that'll be his personal main character thing that I would be exploring. And that just came out of the fact of I don't want it to be just him as protagonist, like he unleashes the demon or whatever, but this aggressive need to obtain control stirs a malevolent energy. It could filter out into the rest of them, but mainly about him. Strange things begin to happen as tools feel heavier, as if resisting his grip. Shadows flicker in daylight, and the phantom screams echo in the silence. But what he has unleashed within himself, that's really cool. That's actually really quite good. So then this thing about him being more violent than he grows to be the way he is, um, eventually, I guess, goes through it. Interesting. Well, that would be more exploration of what to do on that. But that's the difference between main character and objective story. And that'll do it for narrative sync. Um, Anybody have any questions? Anything? Everybody's doing well? Enjoying the start of the year? Yeah. So I can say something in 2 weeks. So after March 5th, I'm allowed to say stuff. And there'll be some really fun things, very different ways of writing a story. Um, I think everybody that has been around all this stuff will find it quite interesting. Uh, but until then, I will keep doing this. And if you have any questions, I'm always available either through Discord or email. Otherwise, I will see everybody next week. Excellent. See you.